Very dark. Hi, I'm going to check and see. Well, hopefully, I am live. Oh, do I have to check and see Smith Griffin? Smith Griffin 5G. Okay, I don't know why it's so dark. Um, Today's my mom's birthday. My name is Douglas Griffin. It's June 29th, so I'm doing kind of a short Bible study because we're about to take her out to dinner. So if you're tuning in at 7 o'clock, going, where is it? Well, of course, anyway, so we're just early. We're just early, and I'm doing a shortened version uh, um, of the Bible study. We're in John chapter 7, and here we go. John chapter 7, part 2, I call it, Who Are My Brothers? Now, in John chapter 7, verse 1, it says, After these things, and the things he's talking about is the Passover. Jesus went down to the Passover. John didn't see fit to record Jesus going down to the Passover because to him it was uneventful. It says, After these things, Jesus walked in Galilee and had a bunch of adventures in Galilee. Galilee was Jesus' favorite place. It's like Northern California. Samaria was Central California. Judea, where Jerusalem was like Southern California, right? He loved it up there north. He got all his disciples from up north, loved spending his time up there. So John doesn't record any of his adventures up there because they're already in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John's whole goal is I'm going to give you the things that they didn't talk about. So he says, after this, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, which means Jerusalem. They called it Jewry, because it wasn't his time. And it was going to cause a big stir, and God didn't lead him to go there. There was a time that he was going to dedicate the last 6 months, really the last 9 months, he was going to be there and not leave and really focus very sharply on his ministry there. So he really said, let me spend a whole bunch of time everywhere else since I'm going to be focusing the whole last 9 months of my ministry in just one place. This says, as Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry. Second part of verse 1 says, because the Jews sought to kill him. So, uh, and it was not his time yet. It's not like Jesus was afraid to be killed. There was a time when God wanted all that to happen, which is around Passover the next year, right? So it says, now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand, 3 feasts. They have the Feast of Passover around March, April. 50 days later, the Feast of Pentecost. And then around September, October, the Feast of Tabernacles. John chapter 7, verse 3 says, his brethren therefore said unto him, depart hence, and go into Judea, that thy disciples may also see the works that thou doest. So his brothers, and that's what we're going to delve into, you should go to Judea, so your disciples may see the works, everything that you do. Now, his brothers wanted him dead. Everybody knows that if you go to Jerusalem, they're going to try to kill you. His brother says, go to Jerusalem. So that's what we're going to investigate. For there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If you're trying to be known openly and everybody declare you the Messiah, why are you hiding up here in Galilee? If thou doest these things, show thyself to the world. So if all these miracles are true and blah 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 blah, show yourself to the world. Okay. Now, it's John chapter 7, verse 5 says, for neither did his brethren believe in him. So let me tell you up front, these were actually his cousins. They had one word for relative or kinsman, and they used it to describe an uncle, a cousin, a brother, a son, and you just simply had to guess from the context. Is he talking about his son? Is he talking about his grandson? Right? So they translated his brothers, but really it was his cousins. Mark chapter 3, verse 13 says, says he went up to a mountain and he called to him those he himself wanted. So a bunch of people had been following him. This is toward the beginning of his ministry. He started off in Galilee, And so this is the very beginning of his ministry. He doesn't even really have his disciples yet. He's been preaching around, and large crowds have been gathering. There are certain ones, though, he had called out. I want you to be basically my apostles. So the whole group they call disciples, because that just means they're taught by him. They're his disciplined ones. They're his students. So there's 70 of them. But there's 12 specifically he was calling out that he was going to assign to be his apostles. So he says he went up in a mountain, called to him those who himself wanted, and they came to him. Then he appointed 12. Out of that whole bunch, he appointed 12, that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. So you're going to be with me, you're going to follow me closely, and eventually I'll be sending you out to preach. So Mark's saying, here's the reason why they did it. Mark's getting this information from Peter. At the end of Peter's ministry, Mark went to him, and Mark wrote down everything that Peter said. Okay, so he wanted to send them out to preach and to have power to heal sickness and to cast out demons. Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter. So Peter lists himself first. Again, Mark wrote this book, but he's taking dictation from Peter. So Simon, who he nicknamed Peter, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James. So this James and John are the son of Zebedee. There's another James, but not the son of Zebedee, to whom he gave the name Boanerges, and that is the son of thunder, the sons of thunder. And he made fun of James and John because one of the times that Jesus wanted to go through Samaria, they weren't having it. The Samaritans were like, don't you come through here, because they knew he was only going through Samaria because he can get to go to Jerusalem. Therefore, saying Jerusalem is the real place. And the Samaritan says, no, Samaria is a real place. And if you go to Jerusalem, we're mad at you. Well, Jesus was, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. So when they wouldn't receive him, James and John said, let's call down thunder from the sky. And Jesus laughed. And, boy, you don't really understand the things of God at all, do you? You don't know what spirit you're of. And he called them the sons of thunder from then on. Okay, that's James and John. There's Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, and James, the son of Alphaeus. So this is the James who actually is a brother to Jesus. Actually, it's his cousin. Alphaeus is also called Cleopas. I don't know why. For some reason, they called him Alphaeus. They also called him Cleopas. So here they use the name Alphaeus. And then there was Thaddeus, and then there was Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot. Now they call him Judas Iscariot because there's another Judas. This other Judas is Bartholomew. His name was like Judas Bartholomew, blah, blah, blah. And Judas, his name was so, it's like naming your baby Hitler. You just wouldn't do it. Once the name Judas became really a bad name, Judas himself started going by the name Bartholomew. I get it. Just call me by my middle name so people don't get us confused and start throwing rocks at me. Judas Iscariot, and so they always put his last name, who also betrayed him. And they went into a house. Then the multitude came again so that they could not so much as eat bread. There was such a throng, they couldn't even eat bread, right? They can't even eat because you're so crowded, the crowd's thronging. He says, but when his own people heard about this, that's his family heard, they went out to lay hold of him, for they said, he's out of his mind, which is fantastic. His own families, this man's crazy. Because they just know him as Jesus, the guy they grew up with, and now he's claiming to be the Messiah, and so they're like trying to stop him because you're going to be an embarrassment to the family. These are the brothers who said, go on to Jerusalem, let them kill you. Okay. Then his brothers and his mother came, and standing outside, they sent to him. So not Jude and James who were with him. He has 4 brothers. 2 of them were with him, 2 weren't. And really, they were cousins. That's all I'm going to keep saying. But 2 were with him, 2 weren't. So they stand outside calling him, like, come out of the house. And a multitude was sitting around him, and they said to him, look, your mother and your brothers, cousins, are outside seeking you. But he answered them, saying, who is my mother and my brothers? And he looked about in a circle at those who sat around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the will of God is my brother and my mother and my sister. Biologically, but they are not. Hey, Paula. Yes, I'm early, Paula, because my mom's birthday, and we're taking out to dinner. Okay. So Jesus is like, okay, biologically they're connected to me, but they're not really my brothers because people who are my brothers are people who are following after God. Matthew chapter 13, verse 55 to 58. Is not this the carpenter's son? This is when Jesus goes to his hometown. Is not his mother called Mary and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? See, so Judas was a brother of his. There's James and Judas, the oldest and the youngest. They were following Jesus, but Joseph and Simon, Joseph and Simon, these are the two who were trying to get Jesus killed because they're horrified. This man is an embarrassment. He claimed to be the Messiah. I'm horrified. Okay, and his sisters, are they not all with us? And sisters. Okay, again, well, I'll explain. Okay, where then did this man get all these things? Like, how, what? We know him, he just was the carpenter's son, and he's got, so how is he getting this big crowd following him? They don't get it. So they were offended, but Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house. Nor did he do many mighty things because of their unbelief. So in his own town, they weren't buying it, including his brothers. Mark chapter 6, verse 1. Then he went out from there and came to his own country, and his disciples followed him. And when the Sabbath had come, he began to teach in the synagogue. Many hearing him were astonished, saying, where did this man get these things? Oh, this is a similar verse, right? It's not this the carpenter's son, but James, Joseph's son. So it's just another verse I put in to establish he had four brothers. In John chapter 19, verse 25, it says, now there stood by the cross of Jesus, his mother, and his mother's sister, Mary, who's the wife of Clopas. Now, Mary had a sister, Elizabeth, right? And Elizabeth's son is John the Baptist. This person who is Mary's sister is really Joseph's sister. So it's Joseph's sister. So it's her sister-in-law. They didn't have a word for sister-in-law. They just said sister. Because we know Mary's sister is Elizabeth. Mary doesn't have a sister named Mary. Joseph has a sister named Mary. And Clopas, or Alphaeus, sometimes they call him Clopas, sometimes called Alphaeus, had four kids. Well, four sons and some daughters too. It says, and there was also Mary Magdalene at the cross. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, which is John, he said to his mother, woman, behold your son. And then he said to the disciple, behold your mother. So he's talking to John. He says, and from that hour, that disciple took her to his home. I'm about to die. He's going to be your son from now on. Now, if these other boys were Jesus's actual brothers, they would have been taking care of the mother. They weren't his actual brothers, so they didn't have any legal, they weren't compelled legally to take care of Mary once Jesus was gone. Jesus' father had passed on many years ago, before Jesus ever began ministering. And so apparently, but before he kind of had adopted, so his sisters, Alphaeus, Cleopas, had also passed, and so he had kind of adopted those kids. They were Jesus's cousins, but Joseph had taken them in his home. But still, they were not legally obligated to take care of. This is not their mother. They had a mother. So he says, John, you take care of her. This is going to be your son. Mother, this is your son. John, that's your mother from now on. There's just no way around it. He did not have brothers. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have said that. He wouldn't have defied. On the cross, he wouldn't have gone against the law like he was this close to living a perfect life. And then he gets to the cross and, oops, I messed up. John is not his real brother, but he's supposed to take care of his mother because he doesn't have any real brothers. Jesus doesn't have any real brothers through that mother. Okay. Jude, so remember there was James and Jude, or Judas, but Jude is the Greek version of it. And then Simon and Joseph, right? Jude, in chapter 1, verse 1 of his book, says, Jude, a bondservant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, or those who are called, to those who are called, sanctified by God the Father, and preserved in Jesus Christ. So Jude, the person who wrote the book of Jude and the person who wrote the book of James, were disciples of Jesus. They were his cousin brothers and went on and wrote these really interesting books. James and Jude wrote the most interesting books. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 3 through 9 says, "For I delivered to you, first of all, that which I also received." So Paul's saying, I gave you what Christ gave to me, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he rose again the third day according to the scriptures, that he was seen by Cephas, who was Peter, right? Then by the 12. After that, he was seen by over 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain to this present. But some have fallen asleep. 500, he was in Galilee. He went to Galilee. After that, he was seen by James. So Jesus gave James a personal appearance too. Peter got a personal one. James got a personal one. And then by all the apostles. So it says he was seen by Cephas, then by the 12. Right. James got his own personal thing because that's his cousin brother. Right. And he was going to be put in charge of the church, even though Jesus left Peter in charge. They gave James as much power as Peter. First of all, Peter was a little flaky, but they gave James as much power as Peter because, well, that's Jesus' brother cousin. Jesus never left James in charge. And James like almost stopped a couple things that Paul was trying to do. But well, he's related to Jesus. Shouldn't he be in charge? No. And sometimes we do that. Well, he's the preacher's son, or shouldn't he be in charge? No, not necessarily. That's not his calling. Okay. So, and then he says, then last of all, he was seen by me. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 5 says, and this is Paul saying he appealed to all those people. Then he appeared personally to me because he made me an apostle. As we call in Acts chapter 1, they said, we need one more apostle. And they drew straws and says, Matthias, you're going to be that apostle. And your name's going to be famous. No. God had already found an apostle named Paul. And there's a lot of stuff we do for Jesus that we don't need to do for him. He's good. We don't need to do it for him. He's like, I'm good. I'm good. Don't worry about it. So, 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 5. Do we have no right to take along a believing wife? Never mind. Don't worry about it. I'm just skimming through. And Acts chapter 1, verse 9. It says, when he had spoken these things, while they watched, he was taken up. So, Jesus gives his last to the disciples as he's about to leave, the apostles, right? He's been crucified. He met them in Galilee. He said, meet me in Galilee, met them in Galilee. Then they all came back down to Jerusalem, and he meets them on the Mount of Olives and gives his last, stay here until you get power on the day of Pentecost. Because it's not just a feast you observe. There's a reason why we observe Pentecost. There's a reason why we observe Passover. And there's a reason why he told us to observe tabernacles, which most of us don't. We don't, but there's a reason for that also, because that tells us who we should be ministering to. Pentecost gives us the power to minister. Stay here and you receive power. Tabernacles reminds us who we're supposed to be ministering to, which is the poor and the widow and the orphan, etc. That our job is not to build great, fantastic, incredible cathedrals and spend millions of dollars building these resorts that people can come to and play ping pong during church. All that money is supposed to go out to the poor. Okay, so he says, while they steadfastly looked toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel and says, hey, men of Galilee. Now, that's just not a nickname. Literally, all the disciples were from Galilee, except for Judas. And on purpose, there's a reason why he went to Galilee and got all his disciples from there. We'll get into that some other time. Men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? The same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven. Then they returned to Jerusalem. So don't sit staring into heaven. Go out and do something. Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey. And when they had entered, they went up to the upper room where they were staying. Peter, James, John, Andrew, Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, who's really Jew, and Matthew, James, the son of Alphaeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judah. It says the son of James, but it really means the cousin of James. Oh, well then Bartholomew wasn't the name he was going by then. Okay. It wasn't Bartholomew. It was that other weird name. Okay, don't worry about it. But Judah is also, so Judah and James, they're in the disciples. It says, And these all continued with one accord in prayer and supplication with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brothers. So the two brothers who wanted him killed, they somehow got converted. James and Judas, they're already, and this is Judas, Jesus' stepbrothers, right? His brother cousins. Mary and his brothers, who had initially been against him, finally came around to believe. Okay? So he says to them, and this is I'm ending here because I need to go. He says to them, um, Jesus said to them, "My time is not come, but yours is always ready." Because they said, "Why don't you go down to Jerusalem?" Knowing they were trying to kill him, because it's not time. There's a time I'm going to go down there and they're going to try to kill me, and they're going to kill me. I'm good with it. It's just not yet. And so timing is everything. He says, "But your time is always ready. You can always get converted. My arms are always open to you." And apparently it worked out. At some point, they became converted after his death and believed. Okay, so I'm going to end there. Thank you so much. We got all the way to verse 6 of John chapter 7. We'll continue there next week. And this Sunday, I'm in the book of Exodus. We're in Exodus, I think, chapter 6, about to go to chapter 7. Again, thank you for listening in. I'm sorry today's lesson was short and sweet, but you understand the circumstances. So I hope you have a blessed day, and I will see you tomorrow. No, I won't. Sunday. Okay, I got all scared myself. Okay, I just have to pull this up there, click that, click this, and end live video. All right, bye-bye.